A scruffy black boy asks a millionaire for tools. "I promise I'll pay you when I grow up." What she does is surprising. "Ma'am, please, I just need some tools for my little sister." "I promise I'll pay you when I grow up." The steady little voice cut through the London night like a knife, causing Isabella Sterling to stop abruptly on the deserted street. At 48, the tech magnate had just left another frustrating meeting in the financial district. Her cybersecurity company was worth $200 million, but she was walking the streets trying to process the numbers that didn't add up. She never imagined that a 7-year-old boy, standing alone in front of a hardware store, would completely change the course of her existence. What happens next is truly surprising, and it might just change the way you see the world. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more incredible tales of resilience and transformation that will leave you inspired. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The boy was holding a worn-out backpack, his large brown eyes shining with a determination that contrasted sharply with his desperate situation. He wasn't crying or begging. He was offering a business deal with the seriousness of an executive. "What's your name?" Isabella asked, crouching down to his height. "Arthur. And this is little Lily." "Oh." He adjusted the backpack on his thin shoulders. "Our dad is very sick and can't go out to buy things." Isabella looked around. It was almost midnight. The streets were deserted, and this child was standing there with a heavy backpack. Something about the dignity in his voice touched her in an inexplicable way. They entered the hardware store, which was still open. Isabella had never paid attention to the basic price of things. When the cashier said £12 for a basic wrench set, she felt ridiculous for not knowing. She added a small soldering iron, some wires, a battery pack, even a beginner's robotics kit. Arthur watched each item being scanned with an expression that seemed to calculate an impossible debt. "That's too much, ma'am. I can't pay for all that. Consider it a long-term investment." Isabella smiled, handing him the bags. Arthur walked with her for 2 blocks until they stopped in front of a dark alley. "This is it. Thank you, ma'am." Isabella Sterling." "Thank you, Miss Isabella. When I grow up, I'll find you and pay you back every penny." He disappeared into the alley with Lily's tools and the groceries. Isabella stood rooted to the pavement, something bothering her deeply. Such a small child alone in the early morning with a heavy load, speaking politely in contrast to his brutal circumstances. Without thinking twice, she followed him, keeping her distance. Arthur crossed a vacant lot until he reached a forgotten underpass where a young man lay on cardboard, visibly feverish. The scene took her breath away. An entire family living in the open with that 7-year-old boy practically supporting them all. The next morning, Isabella returned with groceries and medicine. "I knew you'd come back," Arthur smiled, a rare spark of joy in his eyes. "Dad wants to meet the person who helped us." Thomas, the 28-year-old father, couldn't hide his distrust. He had learned that nothing was free, especially from women in expensive suits. But there was something different about Isabella. Perhaps the respectful way she treated Arthur, keeping her distance and expecting nothing in return. "How did you end up here?" Isabella asked gently. Thomas hesitated. "We lost our apartment 5 months ago. The landlord said he was cleaning the building of undesirable tenants." He lowered his eyes. "People like us, people like you, single fathers, black, no steady income," Thomas whispered as if it were a painful confession. Isabella felt something cold run up her spine. "What about welfare?" "We tried, but there's always problems with our paperwork. There are always forms missing signatures." Thomas hugged Lily's backpack tighter. "It's like the system is designed to keep us invisible. And then, the street gangs, They want us out, say we're bad for their territory. Over the next few weeks, Isabella established a morning routine at the underpass. Arthur always waited for her with stories about gadgets he had fixed, broken radios, discarded phones he tried to repair. "Can you read schematics?" Isabella asked. "A little. Dad taught me before he got sick." Isabella started bringing him old engineering textbooks and circuit boards. Arthur devoured them like food, working diligently on small repairs, even though she knew he was too young to fully grasp the complex concepts. It was brilliant intelligence being wasted by the cruelest of circumstances. "Miss Isabella," Arthur said one morning, his voice soft, "why do you help us? Everyone else pretends we don't exist." The question hit her like a punch in the stomach. "Because you're a real family. You take care of each other. You protect each other. You love each other. I have a lot of money, but I never had that." "Then maybe we can be your family too," Arthur offered, his brown eyes earnest. Isabella felt something break in her chest. This little boy who promised to pay her for tools when he grew up had just offered her something that $200 million could never buy. But what Isabella didn't know was that someone had been watching these morning visits for weeks, and that person had very specific plans to clean up that area of undesirable elements once and for all. Plans that would jeopardize everything Isabella was beginning to love for the first time in her life. While Arthur told Lily made-up stories about brave engineers, Isabella watched that pure love and wondered how such special people ended up invisible to the world. What she would soon discover would not only change her perception of that family, but of an entire system designed to crush people like them. If this story of a child transforming the life of a millionaire is touching your heart, get ready. Because when Isabella discovers who is really responsible for Arthur's situation, she will use every penny to prove that messing with the wrong family can cost a lot more than money. 3 weeks later, Isabella woke up with a feeling that something was wrong. She arrived at the underpass earlier than usual, but instead of finding Arthur tinkering with Lily's toy while Thomas organized their belongings, she was met with a scene that made her blood run cold. 2 rough-looking men, not police, were pouring corrosive liquid on the cardboard boxes where the family slept, while a third shouted orders with obvious sadism. Thomas held Lily against his chest, soaked and shivering, while Arthur desperately tried to save the circuit boards Isabella had given him. "I told you, bums don't stay in this area," yelled a burly man named Big Sid, who clearly relished every second of his abuse of power. "This is our territory, and you are trespassing." "Please, sir," Thomas pleaded, his voice breaking with fever. "We just need a few more days to find another place." "A few days?" Big Sid laughed cruelly. "You've had months. Now get these kids and get out of here before I call social services to take you apart." Isabella watched Arthur stare at the man 3 times his size with a courage that broke her heart. "We're not bums," the 7-year-old said. "We're a family and we're taking care of each other." Big Sid crouched down with a malicious grin. "You know what happens to kids who are too smart? They end up far away from their fathers in places where they learn to keep quiet." Thomas pulled Arthur back, terror evident in his eyes. Isabella saw a man who had learned exactly how cruel the system could be to people like him. "Decent people don't live under bridges," Big Sid growled, adjusting his belt deliberately. "And children don't grow up here if I can help it." When the men left, Isabella approached the devastated family. For the first time since she had known him, she saw Arthur truly cry, clutching wet pieces of the circuit board she had given him. His small voice broken. "They destroyed everything, Miss Isabella. Why?" Isabella crouched down, wiping his tears. "Because some people think they can mistreat those who can't defend themselves. Miss Isabella, Thomas whispered, still shaking. This happens twice a week, always the same thugs. They say we're polluting the neighborhood and threaten to separate us. He can do that. Thomas looked around nervously. People like us. The system doesn't work for people like us. They have connections. We have nothing. Isabella felt something cold and calculating take shape in her mind. Thomas, can I ask you some questions about these men and how you lost your apartment? Why? Because I suspect you're not the only victims. That afternoon, Isabella canceled all her meetings. She called Evelyn Reed, a lawyer who had taken down 3 organized crime syndicates for racketeering and extortion. Then she contacted Oscar Hayes, a private investigator specializing in urban gang activity and municipal corruption. It's a well-known pattern, Oscar explained after Isabella reported the situation. Vulnerable families are systematically evicted from areas marked for her development. The trick is to use thugs like Big Sid to do the dirty work. Dirty work for whom? The Rebirth London Collective. They buy land at low prices after the area is cleaned up of undesirable elements. Isabella felt anger rising in her throat. And what does Big Sid get in return? Extra bonuses for every family that voluntarily relocates. We've been able to track 20 families in the last 9 months. While building her case, Isabella continued to visit Thomas and the children. Arthur had lost his natural joy. He no longer ran to greet her, just waved timidly from a distance. "Miss Isabella," he said one afternoon, "Dad said we might have to leave London." Why? Because the man with the big muscles said that if we don't go away, he'll make me and Lily go to different homes far away from Dad. Isabella felt something break inside her. She crouched down to his height. "Arthur, do you trust me?" "Yes." "Then believe me when I say that no one will ever separate you. Never." "How can you be sure?" Isabella smiled, but there was something dangerous in that smile. "Because people like Big Sid are only brave against those they think can't fight back. They've never faced anyone with my resources." Thomas approached, listening to the conversation. "Miss Isabella, we don't want you getting into trouble because of us." "Thomas, I have $200 million in lawyers who make Big Sid look like a playground amateur. The problem isn't me taking him on, it's him picking the wrong family to bully." That night, Isabella was in her office when Evelyn called. "Isabella, we found something big. Big Sid isn't just evicting families. He's connected to a network that coerces vulnerable parents into signing over their children for adoption to wealthy families, especially if the children show talent or a specific race." "How many children?" 15 in the last 3 years, all from vulnerable families, predominantly black or white. Isabella clenched her fists. This wasn't just about illegal evictions. It was about deliberately separating families to profit from human suffering, exploiting children for specific traits. "Evelyn, how long do we need to build a federal case with your resources?" 2 weeks. And to secure immediate protection for Thomas and the children. "I can arrange that tomorrow." Isabella looked out the window toward the underpass where her new family slept on wet cardboard. In 2 weeks, Big Sid and his superiors would discover they had messed with the wrong family. What they didn't know was that Isabella Sterling had spent 20 years building an empire through ruthless strategy and unlimited resources, and now, for the first time in her life, she had a motivation that went far beyond profit. As Arthur fell asleep in Thomas's arms that night, haunted by Big Sid's screams, Isabella prepared for a war that would prove that sometimes the oppressors choose the wrong victims. And when that happens, revenge comes with surgical precision and infinite resources. Sometimes people like Big Sid forget that in a world where money is power, there are people with enough power to rewrite all the rules of the game. What he would soon discover was that he had poked not just a vulnerable family, but a sleeping lion with 200 million reasons to wake up. The next morning, Isabella woke up with a calmness she hadn't felt in years. As she drank her coffee in her penthouse, she didn't think about financial reports or the day's meetings. Her mind was focused on something much more important, completely destroying the lives of people who profited from the suffering of children. At 7 o'clock in the morning, Evelyn Reed arrived at Isabella's office carrying 3 thick folders. "We got much more than we expected," she said, spreading documents across the table. "Big Sid isn't just corrupt, he's stupid. He left digital footprints everywhere." Oscar Hayes entered shortly after, carrying professional recording equipment. "The cameras we installed captured Big Sid making explicit threats against at least 10 different families, but the best is yet to come." Isabella leaned back in her chair. "Go on." "Big Sid has a private encrypted chat group with other gang enforcers and even some crooked social workers, where they literally bet on how many families they can clean up each week, and which children they can push into adoption. We have screenshots of everything." Evelyn laughed coldly. "They call the black children strong stock and white children blue-eyed angels, because wealthy families pay more for specific traits. Arthur and Lily were next on the list, specifically for their intellectual potential and racial profile, respectively." Isabella felt something cold run up her spine. This wasn't just about illegal evictions. It was about institutionalized human trafficking, exploiting genetic and racial traits. "How much evidence do we have?" "Enough to take down the entire syndicate and even expose some dirty adoption agencies," Oscar replied. "But you said you wanted something more personal." "Exactly. Big Sid is going to learn that there are consequences for threatening my family." While Isabella planned Big Sid's downfall, the thug continued his routine of terror. That afternoon, he showed up at the underpass accompanied by a smarmy social worker Isabella didn't even know existed. "Mr. Thomas," the woman said with a fake smile, "I'm Brenda Davies from Children's Services. We've received reports of parental neglect." Thomas hugged Lily tighter, terror evident in his eyes. "My children are well cared for." "Sleeping in the open isn't caring," Big Sid interrupted sadistically. "Children need stable homes, not fathers who can't even pay rent." Arthur, who had been playing nearby, ran to his father. "Daddy, are they going to take us away?" Brenda Davies crouched down with a rehearsed smile. "Honey, we only want what's best for you and your little sister. There are wonderful families waiting to give you the love and stability you deserve." "I have love and stability," Arthur replied with courage that broke Thomas's heart. "I have Daddy and Lily and Ms. Isabella." Big Sid laughed cruelly. "That rich lady who shows up here, she'll get tired of you soon, just like she always does. Women like her don't really care about people like you." What Big Sid didn't know was that every word was being recorded in high definition by the cameras Isabella had installed. More importantly, he had just made the fatal mistake of completely underestimating his true opponent. That night, Isabella received the day's recordings. She watched Big Sid mock Arthur, threaten Thomas, talk about strong stock and blue-eyed angels, as if children were merchandise. For the first time in years, Isabella felt something her business competitors knew well: cold, calculated rage. "Evelyn," she called at 11 that night, "I want you to file a federal complaint first thing in the morning. Human trafficking, racketeering, civil rights violations, everything. Get the National Crime Agency involved." "What about the family?" Big Sid might try something desperate when he realizes he's under investigation. Isabella smiled, but there was something dangerous about that smile. The family will be safe because tomorrow they're moving into my house. Isabella, are you sure? This could complicate the case. I'm not asking for permission, Evelyn. I'm informing you of my decision. The next morning, Isabella arrived at the underpass with 2 lawyers, a moving truck, and temporary guardianship papers already prepared. Thomas looked at her in confusion when she explained the situation. Miss Isabella, we can't accept this. It's too much. Thomas, Isabella interrupted gently. In 48 hours, Big Sid will find out that he messed with the wrong family. When that happens, you need to be somewhere safe. Arthur tugged at her sleeve. Miss Isabella, will you really protect us from the bad man? Isabella crouched down to his height. Arthur, do you trust me? Yes. Then believe me when I say that the bad man will never bother you again, or any other family. Thomas saw something in Isabella's eyes that reassured him and worried him at the same time. There was determination there, but also something darker, something people like Big Sid would never expect to find in a sentimental entrepreneur. As the family gathered their few belongings, Isabella received a message from Oscar. Big Sid just posted in the chat group that he got 2 more strong stock marked for collection. He really thinks he's untouchable. Isabella typed a quick reply. Let him think that. Tomorrow, he'll learn the difference between bullying defenseless families and taking on someone with unlimited resources and federal lawyers. For a moment, as she carried Lily to the car, Isabella thought about how strange it was that her life had changed so completely because of a little boy asking for tools in the middle of the night. But looking at Arthur holding Thomas's hand, she knew she would do it all over again. What Big Sid didn't understand was that he had just turned a successful businesswoman into something much more dangerous. A protective mother with $200 million and absolutely no limits when it came to defending her family. 48 hours later, Big Sid woke up believing it would be just another routine day of cleaning up the streets. He had no idea he was about to experience the last day of his career and possibly his freedom. At 8 o'clock in the morning, he received an urgent call from his gang leader, a shadowy figure known only as the proprietor. Sid, I need you to come to the warehouse immediately. We have a delicate situation. When he arrived, he found the proprietor looking grim, surrounded by 3 National Crime Agency officers, 2 federal agents, and to his utter bewilderment, Evelyn Reed, the most feared civil rights lawyer in the city. Mr. Sid, said the proprietor, trying to appear calm, do you know Ms. Reed by reputation? Big Sid replied, trying to keep his voice steady, but already feeling cold sweat on his back. Evelyn activated a tablet and turned the screen toward him. Do you recognize these images? Big Sid's blood ran cold. It was him in high definition pouring corrosive liquid on Thomas's belongings, threatening to separate the children, using intimidating language against a defenseless family. The recordings had crystal-clear audio of every cruel word he had uttered. Where did you get this? His voice came out louder than he intended. Security cameras legally installed in a public area. Evelyn smiled coldly. But that's just the appetizer. She slid to the next video. Big Sid watched in horror as his own voice confessed to other enforcers that he received extra bonuses for relocating undesirable elements and arranging adoptions. Conversations he thought were private recorded with professional quality. 70 families, Mr. Sid. 70 families you terrorized and illegally evicted over the last 2 years, and 15 children you coerced parents into signing away. One of the federal agents leaned forward. Agent Davies, NCA, we're investigating allegations of human trafficking, extortion, racketeering, and systematic civil rights violations. Your name comes up on all of them. Big Sid felt his legs go weak. Human trafficking? I never. Evelyn interrupted, playing audio from a phone conversation. Big Sid's unmistakable voice echoed through the room. I managed to get 2 more strong stock for pickup. The boy is 7 years old, perfect for those rich families who want smart, black children. The girl is blue-eyed angel, good for other arrangements. Strong stock, blue-eyed angels. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Is that what you call children, Mr. Sid? The proprietor shook his head in disgust, though his eyes showed fear. 20 years of loyalty, Sid. How did you get to this point? But Big Sid was barely listening. His mind was racing, trying to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Then Evelyn showed him the next piece of evidence. Screenshots from the encrypted chat group where he and other enforcers bet on how many families they could expel each week. You can't clear 5 bums by Friday? Evelyn read aloud. I won. I separated 2 kids yesterday, double commission this month. The boy is a stock tier, the girl is angel tier, very lucrative. A heavy silence filled the room. Big Sid saw his career, his freedom, his entire life evaporating before his eyes. Who's behind this? Agent Davies asked. Because we know you didn't organize this operation alone. Big Sid hesitated, but Evelyn played another recording. Him talking about orders from the proprietor and the Rebirth London Collective project. The Rebirth London Collective, Evelyn said. £20 million in fraudulent municipal contracts. You used psychological terror to drive families out. Then the company bought their land for next to nothing. Agent Davies placed a tape recorder on the table. Mr. Sid, you have the right to an attorney, but if you cooperate now, we may be able to work something out. That's when the door opened and Isabella Sterling entered the room carrying a briefcase. Big Sid recognized her immediately, the sentimental businesswoman who visited the family under the underpass. Sorry I'm late, Isabella said calmly. I was finishing up the last details of the investigation. Big Sid felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. You were documenting every crime you've committed, Isabella confirmed. Opening the folder, including these recorded conversations with your superiors at the collective, she played audio from a meeting where company executives openly discussed how to use Big Sid and other enforcers to clean up problem areas before land acquisitions. The important thing is that it looks legal. The Rebirth London Collective CEO's voice echoed through the room. Sid knows how to pressure these families without leaving an official trail. Big Sid sank into his chair. This wasn't just gang abuse. It was criminal conspiracy involving millions of pounds, reaching into high places. Ms. Sterling, Agent Davies said, what exact role did you play in this investigation? Isabella smiled, but there was something dangerous about that smile. When I saw Mr. Sid threaten a family I consider my own, I decided to use my resources to find out exactly who I was dealing with. Evelyn added, Miss Sterling funded a 6-month investigation that exposed a corruption ring worth £50 million in misappropriated public funds and child trafficking. Big Sid finally understood the magnitude of what had happened. He hadn't just intimidated a vulnerable family. He had picked the wrong family, one protected by someone with unlimited resources and absolute determination. Mr. Sid, Isabella said, approaching the table, do you remember what you said to Arthur on his last day, that women like me get tired of people like him? Big Sid nodded weakly. You were right about one thing. I did get tired. Tired of seeing innocent children terrorized by people who were supposed to protect them. Isabella placed more documents on the table. Offshore bank accounts, suspicious transfers, fraudulent contracts, 3 years of evidence proving that you and your superiors turned child protection into a human trafficking pipeline based on racial and intellectual profiling. The proprietor stood up, defeated. Mr. Sid, you are suspended immediately. You will be charged with extortion, human trafficking, racketeering, and systematic violation of civil rights. Big Sid tried to speak, but could only whisper, "How did you get all this?" Isabella leaned forward. You completely underestimated who you were fighting. You thought you were dealing with a defenseless family and a naive businesswoman. Evelyn added, Miss Sterling has 200 million pounds, a team of 15 specialized lawyers, and private investigators across 3 countries. You picked the wrong opponent. As Big Sid was led out of the room in handcuffs, he heard Isabella say to Agent Davies, "Agent, I have more evidence on the other enforcers involved and how the Rebirth London Collective used social housing funds to finance private projects." That afternoon, as news of the largest anti-corruption operation in London history dominated every channel, Isabella was at home watching Arthur teach Lily to draw circuits in the garden. "Miss Isabella," Arthur asked, "will the bad man never bother anyone again?" "Never again, sweetheart. Neither him nor the people who made him do bad things." Thomas approached, holding a cup of tea. "Isabella, I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to thank me for protecting my family," she interrupted gently. Arthur looked up from his drawing. "Are we really her family?" Isabella crouched down beside him. "You're the only real family I've ever had." As the sun set over the city, Isabella reflected on how a simple question, "Ma'am, I need tools for my little sister," had completely changed her life. Arthur had taught her that family isn't something you buy, it's something you choose. And when someone threatens that family, you discover that protection is priceless. Sometimes powerful people forget that there are even more powerful people watching. And when those people decide to act, justice doesn't just come as punishment. It comes as a complete transformation of reality. Big Sid thought he was going after a vulnerable family, but he was actually waking up a sleeping giant who would rewrite the rules of the game forever. 6 months later, Isabella woke up to the sound of laughter coming from the garden. Through her window, she saw Arthur teaching Lily how to calibrate a small robot on the lawn, while Thomas pruned roses he had chosen especially to match his daughter's favorite colors. "Mummy Isabella," Arthur shouted, running toward her when she appeared at the door. The word "mummy" still made her heart race every time she heard it. Thomas smiled, wiping the dirt from his hands. "He's insisted on calling you that since you signed the adoption papers." Isabella crouched down to hug Arthur, and I insist that it's the most beautiful word I've ever heard. Big Sid, meanwhile, had discovered that justice has a long memory and surgical precision. Sentenced to 20 years in prison for human trafficking and racketeering, he spent his first months trying to understand how a sentimental businesswoman had completely destroyed his life in a matter of weeks. In the same prison where many of the families he had separated visited their children in foster homes, Big Sid learned that reputation is like crystal. Once broken, it can never be put back together. The Rebirth London Collective had all its contracts cancelled, lost £150 million in federal fines, and its executives discovered that trying to profit from human suffering, especially exploiting specific racial or intellectual traits in children, can cost much more than money. It can cost freedom. "Ms. Isabella," Arthur said that afternoon as he helped prepare dinner, "my teacher asked me what I want to be when I grow up." "And what did you say?" I said, I want to help other families like ours, families that people pretend don't exist. Isabella stopped cutting vegetables and looked at the 7-year-old boy who had turned her life upside down. You know you can be anything you want, right? Yes, but I want to be just like you, someone who uses his power to protect those who need it. Thomas, who was listening from the table where he was feeding Lily, smiled. He's right, Isabella. You taught us that family isn't about blood. It's about choosing to care for one another. That night, as she tucked Arthur into bed in his room filled with books and colorful schematics, Isabella reflected on the irony of life. She had spent 48 years accumulating wealth, thinking it would make her happy, only to discover that true wealth came when a little boy asked her for tools for his little sister. "Mummy, Isabella," Arthur whispered sleepily, "thank you for choosing us as your family. Thank you for teaching me what family really means, my brilliant boy." 6 months after the trial, Isabella received a call that surprised her. It was from the mayor inviting her to create a municipal family protection program that would prevent other children from going through what Arthur had faced, specifically targeting the racial and intellectual profiling in illicit adoptions. "I accept," she replied without hesitation. "But I have one condition." "What is it?" "I want Arthur to cut the ribbon at the opening. He taught me that protecting families isn't charity, it's responsibility." On the day of the Sterling Family Innovation and Protection Center's grand opening, hundreds of people gathered to watch a 7-year-old boy, holding a small, precisely engineered pair of scissors, cut the ribbon on a project that would change thousands of lives. Isabella watched from the back, holding Lily on her lap, while Thomas held Arthur's free hand. "Daddy," Arthur whispered to Thomas before cutting the ribbon, "are we helping other families not go through what we went through?" "We are, my clever boy, and it's all because you had the courage to ask for help from someone who could make a difference." When the cameras caught Isabella wiping tears from her eyes at that moment, everyone understood that this story wasn't about a millionaire saving a family. It was about a family saving a woman who had everything except what really mattered. Big Sid, watching the news from prison, finally understood the lesson that cost him his freedom. When you choose to terrorize the defenseless, you sometimes find that they aren't as defenseless as they seem. Isabella learned that true wealth isn't measured in millions of pounds, but in laughter in the backyard, heartfelt hugs, and the certainty that someone is running to you shouting, "Mummy," when you come home. And Arthur. He learned that sometimes when you have the courage to ask for help, you find not only what you needed, but much more than you ever dreamed of. The little boy who promised to pay for tools when he grew up ended up paying with something much more valuable. He taught a lost woman that family is the only wealth that truly multiplies when shared.